si riron de ale, Piero el líder Apache ordino, quasi casaron con el hombre blanco. The morning sun rose slowly over the Apache village, painting the desert sky with shades of gold and pink. The village, hidden among rocky hills and stretches of open land, was quiet except for the sounds of children laughing and women preparing their daily chores. Smoke rose gently from small fires as people began their day, unaware that something unusual was about to enter their lives. A man approached from the distance, walking carefully across the dusty path that led to the village. He was not like anyone the villagers had ever seen before. His clothes were foreign, made of rough material stitched in strange patterns. His boots, tall and sturdy, made heavy prints on the soft earth. He carried a small bag over his shoulder and moved with a cautious curiosity. At first glance, he seemed harmless, almost fragile, yet there was a spark in his eyes that suggested determination. As he came closer, children noticed him first. Their small voices rang out in laughter. "Look at him! He doesn't belong here," one child shouted. Another added, "Why does he wear such funny clothes?" Their innocent laughter carried across the village, catching the attention of adults. Some of the older villagers frowned, unsure of what to make of the stranger. They whispered to each other in low tones, wondering why a man from another world would wander into their home. The man stopped at the edge of the village. He looked around, taking in the mud-and wood homes, the drying corn, and the women weaving baskets. He raised his hand in greeting, a simple gesture of peace. Some villagers stared silently, while others chuckled at his awkward attempt to fit in. He bowed slightly, trying to show respect, but the laughter did not stop. The man's heart sank a little, yet he straightened his back and smiled, refusing to let the mockery discourage him. He took a deep breath and began to speak, using simple words he hoped would be understood. "Good morning," he said slowly, emphasizing each syllable. The villagers tilted their heads, trying to understand, but most of the words sounded strange to their ears. A few children repeated the words in mockery, giggling as they distorted his accent. The man realized he had much to learn about this place and the people who lived there. Despite the laughter, he did not turn away. He carefully stepped forward, keeping his hands visible to show that he carried no weapons. An elder, sitting on a low wooden stool, watched him silently. The elder's face was lined with years of wisdom, and his eyes, sharp yet gentle, seemed to weigh the man's intentions. He said nothing at first, only observing as the man approached the center of the village. The villagers began to gather, curious now not only about the man, but about each other's reactions. Some whispered doubts. "Why is he here? Is he dangerous?" Others were amused. "He doesn't know how to walk properly." The children continued to tease him, pointing at his hat, which was tall and stiff, unlike anything they had ever worn. The man's smile faltered for a moment, but he remembered his purpose. He had come here for a reason, and he could not allow the laughter to drive him away. He knelt down slightly to meet the children's eyes, speaking gently. "I am not here to harm anyone. I want to learn and live in peace." His voice was calm, steady, and kind. Some of the villagers looked at him differently now, noticing the sincerity in his tone. The elder finally spoke, his voice firm but not unkind. "You are far from your home," he said. "Why do you come here where you are not known?" The man swallowed and replied honestly. "I have heard of your people and your ways. I wish to understand your life and share mine. I hope to live among you if you allow me." His words hung in the air, creating a moment of quiet. The villagers exchanged glances, unsure whether to accept or reject him. In the Apache tradition, strangers were always treated carefully, but courage, honesty, and respect were valued above all. The man stood, adjusting his bag, and took another step into the village. He noticed small animals scurrying through the paths and women pausing in their work to watch him. Every movement he made was cautious, as if he knew he was being judged with every glance. The children began to follow him, whispering and giggling, yet also watching him closely, trying to see if he would falter. Suddenly, one of the children threw a small rock in his direction, aiming not to hurt but to test him. The man instinctively bent down, picking up the rock and holding it carefully in his hand. He looked at the child with a gentle smile. "I do not wish to fight," he said. The child's eyes widened, surprised by the calmness and patience in his response. The laughter faded for a moment, replaced by curiosity. The elder finally rose from his stool, his presence commanding silence. He stepped forward, looking directly at the man. "You have courage," he said. "Few would walk alone into a place where they are not known." The man bowed slightly in respect, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. Though he had faced mockery, he had also earned the attention of someone whose opinion mattered greatly in this community. The day continued with small trials. Villagers gave him tasks to see how he would respond, fetching water from a distant stream, helping with minor chores, or simply observing the ways of the people. Each task, no matter how simple, was a challenge because it was unfamiliar. He stumbled at first, spilling water or tripping over uneven ground, and the villagers laughed. But he never complained or showed frustration. Instead, he kept trying, asking questions respectfully and observing carefully. By evening, the man had completed several small tasks, learning from his mistakes and showing a willingness to adapt. The children, once laughing at him, began to watch him with interest. They saw that he was not giving up, and slowly, their amusement turned into quiet admiration. Even some adults began to nod in approval, recognizing that courage was not only about strength, but also about perseverance and respect for others. As the sun set, the sky turned a deep orange, casting long shadows across the village. Fires were lit, and the smell of cooking food filled the air. The man sat quietly near the edge of the village, tired but content. He had survived the first day, faced ridicule, and yet remained unshaken. The elder approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Tomorrow will be harder," he said, "but if your heart is true, you will find your place here." The man nodded, understanding that his journey had only begun. He looked around at the villagers, some still whispering, some observing silently, and he felt a strange sense of hope. He had entered a world completely unknown to him, full of challenges and mockery, yet also full of possibilities. The laughter that had greeted him in the morning had not defeated him. Instead, it had become a test he intended to pass with patience, respect, and courage. As the night fell, stars emerged in the clear desert sky. The village settled into quiet rhythms, the sounds of animals and distant wind accompanying the people as they rested. The man lay on the ground, gazing upward, thinking about the long road ahead. He understood that to be accepted, he must do more than survive. He must learn, adapt, and show that his heart was worthy of trust. And so, the first day ended not with shame or retreat, but with quiet determination. The man, once mocked and laughed at, had begun a journey that would challenge everything he knew about himself and the world around him. The villagers, though uncertain, had begun to see that perhaps there was more to this outsider than they first believed. The next morning, the village was alive with the usual sounds of activity. Children ran between the homes, women tended to the fires, and men prepared for the day's work in the fields and with their animals. The outsider, the white man, rose early as well. He had learned from the previous day that respect and patience were essential in this place. He stretched, adjusted his bag, and quietly began walking toward the center of the village. Today, he hoped, would be another opportunity to show that he was not just a foolish stranger but someone willing to learn and adapt. As he walked, a few children spotted him first. Their eyes lit up with mischief. "Look, it's the man from yesterday. Let's see what he does today," one of them whispered. They began to follow him, whispering and giggling. Some tossed small sticks toward him, while others hid behind homes to watch his reaction. The man smiled softly, He knew that his every action was being noticed. He bent down to pick up a small stick that had rolled near his feet and handed it back to one of the children. "Thank you," he said politely. The child blinked in surprise, not expecting the stranger to respond so kindly. The elder from the day before appeared again, sitting calmly on his low stool near the center of the village. His eyes were sharp, watching every movement of the man. He did not speak at first, only observing. Around him, villagers gathered, curious to see what the stranger would do next. There was a mix of amusement and skepticism. Many whispered, "He will fail today," while a few others, older women and young adults, were quietly hopeful. The man approached the elder with caution. "Good morning," he said slowly. The elder nodded, acknowledging the greeting without words. Then he handed the man a small task, to carry water from the river to the village. It seemed simple, but the river was a long walk away and the containers were heavy. The villagers laughed quietly, expecting him to struggle or spill the water. Children followed him, giggling, waiting for a mistake to happen. The man took the containers carefully and began walking toward the river. The path was uneven, and rocks threatened to trip him at every step. His hands were sore from carrying the heavy water, but he refused to complain. He remembered the words of the elder. Patience and courage would be noticed. Step by step, he moved steadily, balancing the containers and keeping his focus. A few times, the water sloshed dangerously close to the edges, but he adjusted quickly, showing determination and skill that surprised some of the onlookers. When he returned to the villagers' laughter was mixed with murmurs of surprise. He had completed the task without spilling much water. Some of the adults nodded subtly, acknowledging his effort. Even the children, who had been hoping to see him fail, were impressed. "He did it," one whispered. "Maybe he is not as clumsy as we thought." The man placed the containers down gently, smiling at the elder. "Here is the water," he said simply, as if nothing unusual had happened. The elder studied him for a long moment, then nodded approvingly. "You are learning," he said. "You are trying even when it is difficult. That is important." The man bowed slightly, grateful for the recognition. He understood that approval in this village was not given lightly. Every word of praise was earned through actions, patience, and respect. The rest of the day was filled with small challenges. The man helped a woman gather herbs from the nearby hills, carefully following her instructions. He stumbled a few times, almost dropping the bundles, but he kept calm and continued. Villagers watched closely, some whispering encouragement, others skeptical but intrigued. Each task, no matter how small, allowed the man to learn more about the people around him and their ways of life. During the afternoon, a group of children approached him with a playful challenge. "Can you climb the hill like us?" one asked, pointing to a rocky slope where the village often played games. The man looked at the hill, its uneven rocks and loose soil making the climb risky for someone untrained. Yet he smiled and nodded. "I will try," he said. The children laughed at first, thinking it would be impossible, but he began to climb carefully, choosing each step with care. It took longer than the children expected, but he reached the top. He did not rush, and he did not give up when he stumbled. When he reached the summit, he raised his hand in a small wave. The children stared, mouths open. Then, one by one, they clapped and cheered, impressed by his perseverance. Even some adults who had been watching from below nodded in quiet approval. The man's actions were slowly earning respect, even among those who had laughed at him the day before. As the sun moved toward the horizon, he returned to the village, tired but satisfied. He had not only completed the tasks, but had also begun to show that he could adapt to the community's ways. Villagers began to treat him differently, no longer just as a source of amusement, but as someone who was trying, learning, and respecting their customs. Even the children who had teased him were now curious, asking questions about his home, his clothes, and why he had come to their village. The elder called a meeting as the evening approached. The villagers gathered in a circle around the central fire. The man stood quietly, waiting to hear what would be said. The elder spoke, his voice calm but commanding. "This man is different from what you expected. He is not perfect and he makes mistakes, but he shows courage and respect. These qualities are important in our people." The villagers listened in silence, some nodding, others murmuring in agreement. One of the women spoke, her voice soft but firm. "He has worked hard today. He carries himself with patience and humility. Perhaps we have judged him too quickly." Others began to echo her sentiment. The laughter of the morning seemed far away now, replaced by a growing curiosity and cautious respect. Even the children, who had been the loudest in mocking him, began to see him in a new light. The man felt a warmth in his chest, not from pride but from understanding. He realized that respect here was not automatic. It was earned through effort, honesty, and a willingness to learn. The village had given him challenges, and he had faced them without complaint or arrogance. Slowly, he was becoming part of the rhythm of life in this community. As night fell, fires were lit, and the smell of cooking food filled the air. The man helped gather wood and prepare a small fire for himself. He watched the villagers around him, noticing their gestures, the way they spoke to each other, and the subtle signs of leadership and care. Every small detail was a lesson, and he absorbed it carefully, knowing that understanding this world required observation as much as action. The elder approached him one last time that night. "You have shown patience and respect today. This is good. But remember, the road ahead is long. Some will still doubt you and some will laugh. Do not let it trouble you. Continue to learn and you will find your place here." The man bowed deeply, humbled by the words. "I will try my best," he said simply, feeling a sense of determination that ran deeper than before. That night, as he lay beneath the stars, he reflected on the day. The laughter, the challenges, and the small victories had taught him more than he had imagined. He understood that being part of this village would not be easy, but it was possible if he continued with patience, respect, and courage. The children who had once mocked him might even become his friends, and the elders who observed him might become his guides. He drifted into sleep with a sense of hope and anticipation for the days ahead. The next morning, the village would present new challenges, and the man would face them with the lessons of today in mind. He had taken the first steps toward acceptance, and though the journey was far from over, he had proven something important. Laughter could be faced with calmness, mockery could be met with patience, and respect could grow from effort and sincerity. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the Apache village, painting the desert sky with soft shades of orange and pink. The man awoke early, as he had done for several days now. His body was sore from the work of the previous days, yet his spirit remained determined. He knew that each day brought new challenges, but also opportunities to prove himself to the people who had initially laughed at him. Today felt different, though. There was a quiet tension in the air, a sense that the village was watching him more closely than before. As he stepped outside his small shelter, he noticed the elder from the previous days sitting quietly by the central fire. The elder's gaze was fixed on him, calm but penetrating. Around him, other villagers moved about their morning routines, but their eyes occasionally flicked toward the man, as if waiting for something important to happen. Even the children, who had once teased him without mercy, watched with a mix of curiosity and respect. The man realized that today might be a turning point in how the village viewed him. He began his morning tasks with quiet determination, fetching water, tending to small chores, and helping where he could. The villagers observed him carefully. Unlike before, when their attention was mixed with amusement, now there was a seriousness in their eyes. They wanted to see if he could continue to demonstrate the courage, patience, and respect that the elder had praised. Every movement he made seemed deliberate, every step cautious yet confident. By mid-morning, a small group of villagers gathered near the elder. The leader of the village, a tall, strong man with eyes that seemed to see into the heart of every person, had arrived. He walked slowly, his presence commanding silence and attention. The leader's expression was thoughtful, almost stern, as he observed the man who had become the center of attention in the village. This was the first time the leader had approached directly, and the villagers sensed the importance of the moment. The man noticed the leader's gaze and instinctively bowed slightly in respect. The leader did not speak at first. He circled the man slowly, studying his posture, his hands, and even the way he breathed. Every small detail mattered. The leader had seen many outsiders in his time, some brave, some foolish, and some dangerous. He needed to decide if this man, who had survived mockery and demonstrated patience, was worthy of a place in their community. Finally, the leader spoke, his voice calm but carrying weight. "You have come far in a short time," he said. "You have faced our tests, and you have shown respect for our ways. Yet there is more to being part of our people than completing tasks. You must show understanding, courage, and the ability to honor our traditions." The man nodded, listening carefully, knowing that every word was significant. "I am ready to learn and to follow your guidance," he replied. The leader motioned for him to follow. They walked together through the village, past the children playing, past the women tending fires, and past the men working in the fields. The villagers fell silent, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. The leader stopped in the center of the village and turned to face the man. "Our people value strength, wisdom, and respect," he said. "We have watched you, and many in the village have seen your efforts. There are those who laugh, as all do at the unfamiliar, but laughter can hide the truth. Courage is not always loud. It is often quiet and steadfast." The man felt a mixture of humility and pride. He understood that the leader's words were not simple praise. They were recognition of qualities that were rare and respected in the village. He also realized that the leader was testing him in ways beyond physical tasks, examining his heart, his intentions, and his ability to adapt to a life so different from the one he had known. As the day passed, the leader observed him in several activities. The man helped carry firewood, assisted in repairing homes, and even joined in a small lesson where the children were taught the ways of the land, including how to identify plants, track animals, and respect nature. In every task, the man demonstrated patience and attention to detail. When he made mistakes, he corrected them humbly and without complaint. His actions were quietly impressive, and the leader took note of every one. By afternoon, the village had gathered near the central fire again. The leader raised his hand for silence, and the villagers quieted immediately. "We have seen this man live among us for several days," the leader began. "He has faced mockery, he has struggled with tasks, yet he continues with respect and humility. These are qualities that matter more than strength alone." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I have spoken with our elders, and I have considered what this man offers. It is clear that he is not here to harm, but to learn, to adapt, and to honor our ways." A murmur of agreement spread through the villagers, though some still looked uncertain. The man stood quietly, listening, his heart pounding. He knew that the leader's words could change his life completely. He had already faced ridicule, and he understood that acceptance in this village was not guaranteed. Yet he remained calm, trusting in his actions and the sincerity of his intentions. The leader continued, his voice firm and decisive. "Our people live with courage and respect, and we honor those who demonstrate these qualities. This man has shown both. Therefore, I have decided that he will be allowed to live among us fully. He will follow our ways, learn from our traditions, and in time, he may even take part in the responsibilities of our community." The villagers listened, some nodding in approval, others whispering to one another, clearly surprised by the leader's decision. Then the leader said something that caused a stir in the village. More than this, There is a path for him to become part of our family. In accordance with our customs, he will be joined in marriage with one of our people." The words hung in the air. The villagers gasped, and whispers spread like wildfire. Children stopped playing, women paused in their work, and men exchanged astonished glances. The idea that the outsider, once laughed at and mocked, could now become part of their family was shocking. The man felt a rush of emotions, surprise, honor, and responsibility all at once. He had not expected this, and yet he understood the significance. In this village, marriage was not only a personal bond but also a sign of trust and acceptance. To be chosen in this way meant that he was no longer an outsider in name only. He was now part of the community in a way that carried deep meaning. Some villagers whispered doubts. "Is it right?" one asked. "Can he truly belong to us?" Others, however, saw the wisdom in the leader's decision. "He has proven himself," a woman said softly. "Perhaps the laughter of a few should not cloud our judgment." Respect comes from the heart, not just from tradition. The debate continued quietly among the villagers, but the leader's authority was clear. His decision would stand, and in time, the community would come to accept it. The man bowed deeply to the leader, overwhelmed by both the honor and the responsibility. "I am grateful," he said simply. "I will do my best to honor your trust and live according to your ways." The leader nodded, his expression calm but approving. "Then go and learn," he said. "Live with us, respect our people, and show that your heart is true. That is what matters above all." The day ended with a sense of anticipation and quiet reflection. The man sat by the fire, watching the villagers, thinking about the life that lay ahead. He realized that acceptance was not merely given. It was earned through action, respect, and sincerity. The laughter of the past few days was no longer something to fear. It had been a test, a way for the village to measure his character. He had passed that test, and now a greater journey awaited him, one of understanding, belonging, and building bonds that would last a lifetime. As night fell and stars appeared in the clear desert sky, the man felt a deep sense of purpose. He knew that challenges would continue, that learning the ways of the Apache would not be easy, and that some villagers might still doubt him. Yet he also knew that he had taken an important step. The leader had seen his courage, recognized his respect, and given him a chance to become part of something far greater than himself. He closed his eyes and allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He thought about the laughter he had faced, the tasks he had completed, and the silent approval of the elder and the leader. He understood that life in this village would demand patience, humility, and courage every day. Yet he also felt hope, knowing that with each step, he was building a place for himself in a world that had once seemed impossible to enter. The days that followed the leader's decision were filled with a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and careful learning. The man now had a place in the Apache village that went beyond mere presence. He was no longer an outsider simply tolerated. He was a part of the community, and his every action mattered. Yet he understood that earning full trust and acceptance required more than obedience. He needed to learn the ways of the people, adapt to their customs, and prove that his heart and intentions were true. From the very first morning, he rose with the village. He joined the women in preparing the day's meals, carrying water and tending fires, learning the techniques they had perfected over years. They showed him how to grind corn into fine flour, how to shape dough for bread, and how to cook over an open flame without burning the food. At first his hands were clumsy, and the bread he shaped was uneven and rough. The women chuckled softly, not unkindly, pointing out mistakes and guiding him patiently. The man listened carefully, absorbing every instruction, repeating the motions until his hands remembered each step. Later, the elder took him aside to teach him about the land. They walked together across the hills and valleys surrounding the village, learning to identify plants, roots, and herbs. Some were for food, some for medicine, and others for rituals. The man listened intently, memorizing every detail and asking questions whenever he was unsure. His curiosity was genuine, and the elder began to see that he was not just learning for survival, but out of respect for the knowledge of the people who had lived here for generations. The man also spent time with the hunters and trackers of the tribe. They taught him how to follow footprints in the soil, how to read the wind and the movement of animals, and how to remain silent when approaching prey. At first, the lessons were difficult. He stumbled over rocks, misread tracks, and startled animals. The hunters shook their heads with mild frustration, but he never gave up. Slowly, he improved, and his determination began to earn quiet admiration. The children, who once laughed at his awkwardness, began to watch him with interest, asking him questions about what he had learned. One afternoon, he was asked to help with repairing a roof on one of the homes. The task was unfamiliar and physically demanding. He climbed carefully, balancing on wooden beams while villagers guided him from below. At one point he nearly slipped, but a quick movement saved him from falling. The villagers gasped, then breathed sighs of relief, and he smiled at them, unshaken. Completing the repair took hours, but by the end of the day, the roof stood strong, and the man had proven not only his willingness to work hard, but also his courage in facing challenges he had never encountered before. As weeks passed, he began to take part in the daily routines of the village with growing confidence. He learned to weave baskets, carve wooden tools, and even join in some of the games and dances that were important for the children and adults alike. His laughter began to mingle with theirs, not from awkwardness or mockery, but from genuine enjoyment. The villagers, in turn, started to include him more naturally in conversations, asking his opinion on small matters, and even seeking his help in carrying heavier loads or assisting during ceremonies. The bond with his new family was slowly forming as well. The woman he was to marry, chosen by the elder, observed him quietly for many days before speaking to him directly. She was cautious, as were the villagers, yet she could see his sincerity in every action. One day she approached him while he was helping the children gather firewood. "You have worked hard and learned our ways," she said softly. "That is important, but living with us is more than doing tasks. You must understand our hearts and our stories." The man nodded, feeling a warmth of connection he had not expected. "I want to understand," he replied simply. Evenings were spent near the central fire, where the villagers shared stories of their ancestors, their traditions, and the history of the land. The man listened attentively, absorbing the words and learning the lessons they carried. He began to tell small stories of his own life in a distant land, carefully choosing words that showed humility and respect. The villagers were curious, sometimes skeptical, but increasingly intrigued. His stories, though different from their own, were honest and heartfelt, and that honesty mattered more than any skill or strength he could demonstrate. Over time, he also began to participate in minor ceremonies. He learned the proper ways to show respect, how to offer thanks, and how to honor the traditions of the tribe. At first, he worried that he would make mistakes, and sometimes he did. But the elder who had been guiding him reminded him gently, "Mistakes are part of learning. What matters is your heart and your willingness to follow with respect." These words became his guiding principle, and he approached each new ritual with humility and focus. The children were now among his closest companions. They no longer mocked him. Instead, they included him in their games, asked him questions about his experiences, and even sought his help in learning some skills. They admired his patience, his gentle nature, and his willingness to join them rather than stand apart. The man began to feel a sense of belonging he had never known before. What had started as a village full of strangers now felt like a community that accepted him, slowly but surely. One significant day, the leader approached him personally. They walked together toward the hills overlooking the village. "You have come far," the leader said. Not everyone can adapt to a new life so completely. You have shown courage, respect, and humility. The people are beginning to trust you, and your actions speak louder than any words." The man bowed slightly, humbled by the praise. "I am grateful for your guidance," he said. "I will continue to learn and honor the village in all ways I can." The leader nodded thoughtfully. "There will be challenges ahead. Life here is not easy, and the bonds you form must be strong. But remember, acceptance is earned daily, through actions, words, and respect for every person and tradition. You have begun well." These words stayed with the man as he returned to the village, understanding that his journey was ongoing and that every day was another chance to prove himself. As the seasons changed, he adapted to the rhythms of village life. He woke with the sun, worked during the day, shared stories in the evening, and rested beneath the stars at night. He celebrated the festivals, helped during planting and harvesting, and assisted in times of need. Villagers began to smile when he entered a space, greeting him with nods or small words of acknowledgement. The laughter of mockery had vanished, replaced by respect and curiosity. One evening, as the sky turned shades of red and gold, the woman he was to marry approached him again. "You have learned much," she said softly. "But living as part of a family is more than work. It is patience, understanding, and kindness. If your heart is true, you will find that bonds grow naturally." The man smiled, feeling a quiet joy. "I want to understand, and I want to be worthy of the trust given to me." Her eyes softened, a hint of approval in her gaze. By now, even those who had been most skeptical began to recognize his dedication. The children looked up to him, the adults consulted him occasionally, and the elder nodded in approval. The village, once uncertain about the stranger, was slowly embracing him as one of their own. And the man, in turn, was learning not just the practical skills of survival, but the deeper lessons of life: respect, humility, courage, and the importance of community. As night fell, he sat quietly by a small fire, watching the village around him. The laughter, the work, the shared stories, it all felt familiar now. The man realized that he had come a long way from the outsider mocked by the children to someone who was slowly earning a place in the hearts of the people. The journey had been difficult, full of small challenges and tests, but each step had taught him more about life, respect, and belonging than he could have imagined. Months passed, and the man had become deeply woven into the life of the Apache village. What had begun as mockery and doubt had transformed into respect and acceptance. The villagers no longer saw him as an outsider, but as a person who had earned his place through patience, humility, and courage. Every day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove his worth, not just to the villagers but to himself. His bond with the woman chosen for him grew slowly, naturally, and with quiet understanding. At first, their conversations were cautious, filled with questions and careful observations of each other's behavior. She had been hesitant at first, unsure if this outsider could truly respect the ways of their people. But she soon realized that his heart was sincere. He listened attentively when she spoke, followed her guidance in daily tasks, and treated her with kindness and consideration. Small gestures, helping her carry water, assisting in cooking, or walking alongside her during errands, gradually built a foundation of trust and respect between them. One morning, the village gathered for a celebration of the harvest. The air was filled with the sounds of drums, laughter, and songs that echoed through the hills. The man participated fully, helping with preparations, offering guidance to the children, and even joining the dance with hesitant but careful steps. The villagers watched him, noting not only his participation but the genuine joy on his face. He was no longer performing tasks out of obligation. He was fully engaged in the life of the community, and the people recognized it. During the celebration, the elder and the leader observed him closely. "He has changed much since his arrival," the elder whispered to the leader. He is no longer the man we watched with doubt. He has learned our ways, honored our customs, and gained the trust of our people." The leader nodded thoughtfully. "His journey has been remarkable. Courage, patience, and respect. He embodies what we value. In time, he will not only be accepted but remembered for his commitment." The man's relationship with the villagers continued to deepen through everyday acts. He helped build new homes, repaired fences, and taught the children some lessons he had learned from his homeland, carefully blending them with the traditions of the Apache. He learned to read the signs of the seasons, to predict weather changes, and to track animals with skill. The children admired him, following his movements, asking questions, and laughing together as they played games of skill and strategy. The adults sought his opinion on practical matters, slowly recognizing his insight and wisdom. One significant day, a neighboring tribe visited the village. There was tension in the air as the villagers prepared to welcome their guests, uncertain of their intentions. The man, having observed and learned from the leader and elders, stepped forward to assist in the preparations. He helped arrange food, guided children to safer areas, and observed the customs required for proper greetings. The visitors were impressed by the organization and respect shown by the villagers, noting the newcomers' contributions. The man realized that he had gained the trust of the people in a way that went beyond personal acceptance. He was now an integral part of the village's reputation and honor. The woman he was to marry watched him during these events, her eyes reflecting admiration and understanding. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with shades of red and gold, she approached him. "You have proven yourself not only through tasks and learning but through your heart," she said softly. "You have respected our people, our traditions, and our ways. That is more important than anything else." The man bowed his head humbly. "I only wish to honor all that I have been taught," he replied. "It is because of your guidance and the patience of this village that I have come this far." The villagers continued to observe him, noting the consistency of his actions. Even those who had been most skeptical when he first arrived now acknowledged his efforts with quiet nods or words of praise. Children who once mocked him played alongside him, adults consulted him respectfully, and the elders recognized that he had earned his place fully. The laughter that had greeted him on the first day was now replaced with smiles, warm greetings, and sometimes laughter of joy at shared games or stories. As the seasons changed, the time for his marriage approached. The ceremony was simple yet meaningful, reflecting the traditions of the Apache people. Villagers gathered, bringing food, music, and blessings. The man stood with humility, careful to follow every custom he had been taught. The woman beside him radiated quiet confidence, having observed his growth and dedication. When the leader spoke words of blessing, emphasizing courage, respect, and unity, the man felt the weight of the journey he had traveled. He was no longer an outsider. He was part of a family, a community, and a way of life he had once only observed from the edges. The days after the marriage were filled with shared responsibilities, laughter, and quiet moments of understanding between him and his wife. He helped with tasks around the home, taught children small lessons from his own experiences, and continued to participate in the daily routines and special ceremonies of the village. The villagers, now comfortable with his presence, sought his help when needed, trusted his judgment, and included him fully in decision-making processes. One evening, as the village gathered around the central fire, the leader spoke to the assembled people. "We have watched this man come from being laughed at to becoming a trusted member of our community," he said. "He has shown that respect, courage, and patience are more important than any skill or strength alone. He has learned from our people, adapted to our ways, and honored our traditions. Let his example remind us all that acceptance comes from the heart and actions, not from origin or appearance." The villagers nodded, some whispering their agreement, others smiling, feeling a sense of pride and unity. The man felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He thought back to the first days, when laughter had greeted him, when he had struggled with simple tasks, and when he had feared rejection. Each step, each small act of patience and respect had led him to this moment. He understood now that belonging was not something given. It was something earned through consistent effort, sincerity, and a willingness to learn and adapt. Over time, he also became a mentor for newcomers who visited or joined the village. He shared his experiences, teaching them how to approach life in the community with humility and patience. His story became an example of perseverance and respect, showing that even someone from far away, different in appearance and custom, could be welcomed and valued if they approached the village with a sincere heart. The children who had once laughed at him now ran to him for guidance, trusting his advice and enjoying his company. Adults sought his help in resolving small conflicts or planning work, acknowledging his wisdom and judgment. The elders, once cautious, now spoke of him with respect, recognizing the dedication he had shown to learning their ways and honoring their traditions. Years passed, and the man became a part of the village's story. His name was spoken with respect and affection, remembered as the one who had entered as an outsider, faced mockery with patience, and transformed into a valued member of the community. The woman he had married became his partner in life, sharing responsibilities, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of building a life together. Together they raised children, taught them the ways of the land, and ensured that the lessons of respect, patience, and courage were passed down to the next generation. On quiet evenings, he often walked through the village, observing the life around him. The children played, the elders shared stories, and families worked together in harmony. He remembered the laughter that had greeted him on the first day and smiled softly. That laughter had tested him, and he had passed. He understood now that acceptance was not about being flawless, but about showing respect, patience, and courage in every action. The legacy of his journey became more than just his story. It became part of the village's collective memory. The man who had once been mocked was now a symbol of perseverance, understanding, and the power of earning respect through sincere effort. The villagers often told his story to newcomers and children, teaching that courage and humility could bridge worlds, heal doubts, and create bonds that lasted a lifetime. And so, the man lived fully as part of the Apache village, respected, loved, and valued. He had come from a distant land, laughed at and doubted, yet through patience, humility, and courage, he became more than an accepted outsider. He became a true member of the community. The lessons he learned, the bonds he formed, and the respect he earned remained with him for the rest of his life, a testament to the power of sincerity and the human heart.